Welcome to San Joaquin Spotlight, a public affairs program featuring conversations about life in the central San Joaquin Valley. This program is brought to you in partnership between KFSR 90.7 FM and CMAC Fresno. I'm your host, Sevag Tateosian. Today, the studio, it's buzzing with activity, full of volunteers here making San Joaquin Spotlight possible. Our guest this week is Professor Barlow Der Mugrdechian of the Armenian Studies program at California State University, Fresno. Professor, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Sevag.
You know, we've done this interview in the studio at Fresno State, where it was radio, and now here we are in a TV studio. What do you think?
I think it's great. This is a wonderful opportunity, and CMAC is doing a great service for the city of Fresno.
So, Professor, talk a little bit about your program and what you teach at Fresno State.
The Armenian Studies program at Fresno State is one of the very few Armenian Studies programs in the United States, and we offer a wide variety of courses, so students have the opportunity to learn the Armenian language. They can take Armenian art courses, learn about the art history of the Armenian people. We have a survey of Armenian history course. We have an Armenian masterpieces of culture, which looks mostly at literature. And then we have a culture course, which actually looks at the Armenians in Fresno and how they came here and immigrated here. So it's a program that's been in existence for many years, and there have been courses taught at Fresno State since the 1960s. So it's a great program.
Are there times where you would add a class or take a class out? I mean, let's say something very important happens with the Armenian community somewhere. Would you then consider making it a class, or how do you pick what to teach?
Well, our courses are pretty much set by the curriculum also in the university. So many of our courses are part of the general education program. And so those don't change very often. But if there is specific activities or some specific trend, then we can teach what we call a 1-unit or a 2-unit, maybe a weekend course, to see how it goes. And then if that goes well, then we develop it into a regular course.
Speaking of weekend course, I'm smiling because I remember taking dance class on weekends at Fresno State with the program that you do. So do you still do similar things like dance class and other kind of fun things?
All kinds of fun things. We've done dance classes, we've done cooking classes in the past. We take specific areas like Armenians in Fresno, Armenians in America. So those are courses or opportunity for students to do things that we don't have the chance to do in the regular courses.
I'm going to instigate a little bit, Professor, and say, who cares? Why should we even have a program like yours? Why do we care about the Armenians in Fresno? Why do we care about when Armenians even came to this town? How would you respond?
Well, the Armenians are a major element in this valley, in the city of Fresno and in the San Joaquin Valley. And I think it's our role as educators to educate students about the community that they live in. And so Armenians are part of this community, but they have also made a great contribution to world culture. So I think it's fantastically important for students to learn about the Armenians, who they are, their experience, because they can learn from that. And then we have so many different cultural groups here in Fresno. I think it's very important that the Armenians are also included in that.
There's something called the Hai Sharjum, which is a newspaper that's published by your program. And you know, I've written for that newspaper, I've edited that newspaper, and I'm proud to say that it still goes on today. So talk a little bit about that.
Hai Sharjum is a supplement to the collegiate newspaper at Fresno State, and it appears 4 times a year, 2 times each semester. And this year actually marks its 35th anniversary.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It was first published in 1979. So over those 35 years, the newspaper has covered activities on campus, in the world, in the community, and it's basically run by students. The students are the writers, the editors. They help in all aspects of production. And I fortunately have been the advisor for the past more than 20 years of the newspaper, and it's sent over 6,000 subscribers worldwide.
Professor, when I took some classes through the Armenian Studies program, I had this misconception that the only people I would see in there are ethnic Armenians or Armenian Americans. And that's not really the case because, you know, in those classes there's a lot of diversity. It really looks like the city of Fresno in a sense, that diversity. Can you address that?
Well, Fresno State does now begin to reflect the community that we're in. So our courses are fortunately populated by students of all different backgrounds, and often those students become more involved and more interested than even some of the Armenian students. And because these courses are general education, then students can take the course to fulfill one of their requirements, and therefore they want to take it because sometimes they know of an Armenian or they've heard of Armenians, and then they take language courses, the history courses, and the other courses.
Speaking of language courses, you also teach language in class in your program. How does that go?
Well, we teach Armenian language, have been teaching it since really the inception of the program, and it gives students the opportunity to at least get an introduction to the Armenian language, which is one of the Indo-European language families, and so it's really an important language in learning about languages as a whole, and they get to learn some words and some conversations and some simple kinds of things dealing with the Armenians.
Professor, as we look today at the country of Armenia, it's small. The population is how much? I believe 3 million, 4 million. Is that an accurate number?
Well, the Republic of Armenia was founded in 1991. September 21st is its anniversary, and today the population is officially about 3 million. It's probably a little less than that, but that's the official population.
But over in history, it has been much bigger. Can you talk about some important things that has happened in Armenian history that really affected the world?
Well, the area that Armenians lived in, the area that today Armenians live in, is about 1/10 or 1/13 of the historical area that Armenians once lived in. Of course, boundaries of most countries and most areas have changed over time. But I would say that over the past 3,000 years, that the Armenians have lived predominantly in the area which we today call Armenia and what is today called Eastern Turkey. That was the historic homeland of the Armenians. And some of the big achievements were the adoption of Christianity as the official religion of Armenia. That took place in the 4th century, and Armenians are proud to state that they are the first nation in the world to adopt Christianity, and that made a big impact. And then later in the 5th century, Armenians developed their own alphabet, unique alphabet. But even from there, from the 5th century on, Armenians have made great contributions in art, in architecture, in all kinds of areas. And so they really have contributed to the world that we live in.
When were the first Armenians in Fresno? Because a lot of people think it's in the 1900s. In actuality, it's before that.
Right. The very first Armenian permanent settlers arrived in 1881.
1881.
Yeah, that was actually before Fresno, the city of Fresno was incorporated, which it was incorporated in 1885. So the first Armenians came in 1881, and they liked the area. They thought it reminded them much of what Armenia looked like, and the climate was similar. And so they told their friends and family, and over time, Armenians in Fresno actually became the sort of mother colony of Armenians in California. Today that's no longer true. Los Angeles has more numbers, but the history of California is the Fresno Armenians.
You can't talk about the history of Armenian Americans or Armenians without, of course, mentioning 1915. What happened in that year?
1915 marks the beginning of what is called in history the Armenian Genocide, and the date of commemoration is April 24th. And at the time in 1915, there were approximately 2.5 million Armenians living in what then was called the Ottoman Turkish Empire. And the leaders of the Ottoman Turkish Empire decided in 1915 to embark on a plan to eliminate the Armenian population. And in the next few years, from 1915 really all the way up until 1923, they succeeded in doing so in the area which is today Turkey. And so the result was the complete destruction of Armenian culture, the elimination of the Armenian population, really a devastating blow to the Armenians.
During that time, or shortly thereafter, a United States President, Wilson, drew a map of what Armenia should be. What happened to that map?
Well, in 1920, after World War I, and the Ottoman Turks were one of the losing empires in World War I, the Treaty of Sevres was to set the boundaries for the new countries that were to emerge, and Armenia was to emerge as a new country. And they, meaning the great powers at the time, wanted to choose someone who was going to be neutral, and that was thought to be President Woodrow Wilson. And so he was given the task and did draw a map of Armenia as to what it should be in 1920. Unfortunately, that map was pretty much a dead letter, and it was never implemented.
Talk about why the genocide, 1915, is so relevant, or why are Armenian Americans, why are, in Fresno, the churches have an event on April 24th commemorating it. The students on your college campus have an event. at City Hall there's a flag raising. Why is that so important?
Well, it's part of who we are. So every person, every group of people, you have your memory. If you don't have your memory, then you're not anyone. So for Armenians, being part of the genocide is part of our historic memory. We want to commemorate it, to commemorate those who died. We also want to celebrate in the sense of saying that Armenians are still here today. So it's very important that every place in the world that people commemorate the Armenian genocide.
Talk about during the Crusades, the role that Armenia played in the soldiers going through to Jerusalem.
Well, in the 11th century, the people called the Crusaders, who were basically soldiers from Europe, Western Europe, decided to go on a campaign to free Jerusalem, the holy city, in the 11th century. And what happened is that as they traveled through Europe and across to Jerusalem, they passed through an area which is called Cilicia. And at the time, there was a large Armenian population there, Christian Armenians, who welcomed the Crusaders as fellow Christians. And they interacted with each other quite a lot. And in fact, later on, a century later, the Armenians in Cilicia formed their own kingdom in 1199 called the Armenian Kingdom of Cilicia, which was a really quite interesting period in Armenian history.
Talk about Turkey. And one of the reasons I invited you to the program today is because I want you to show some pictures you've taken of Turkey and some of the things in Turkey that are really Armenian. Talk about right now the relationship between Armenia and Turkey.
Well, today actually the two nations do not have full diplomatic relations with each other, so they don't even have ambassadors, but they're neighbors, so they have to live with each other. My goal has always been, and one dream that I had, was to visit those places where my grandparents were from. And I think many Armenians over the years have always had that goal of visiting and seeing where was the Armenia that their families had come from before the Armenian genocide. And 2 years ago, or actually in 2012, I had the opportunity to first travel to what I call historic Armenia, which is the eastern area of Turkey. And I also repeated that trip, but a little bit longer trip, in the summer of 2013. So I visited the places where my own grandparents were from, but also got to visit all of these historic sites which play such an important role in Armenian history.
While there, did people acknowledge that Armenians were there before? Because one of the things that I hear all the time is that, you know, they show these sites as, but there's nothing that says they're Armenian.
Well, in general, the official signs that designate sort of historic monuments are in places like the city of Ani, for instance. They won't mention the name Armenia, but they do mention that there were kings and that there were people here that built it. And anyone knows, of course, that had to be Armenians because there was no Turkish Empire at that time.
So let's take a look now at one of the pictures that you've taken on your trip. By the way, you've taken some great pictures, and I wish we could show all of them.
Right.
But they're up somewhere, right? On your website soon?
Actually, we have on our website, we have our Churches of Historic Armenia, which was donated by the Elbrecht family, and they have taken photos of many of the places that I've visited, but they took only the churches, whereas I've taken a broader idea of where we've been.
So if they Google Armenian Studies Program, Fresno State, they'll find it.
Yes.
So let's take a look at this picture.
Okay. Well, we're looking at one of the really great architectural monuments in Armenian history, and this is the 10th century Church of the Holy Cross, more popularly called Akhtamar, which is found on an island in the area of Lake Van. So the church that you're looking at is actually on an island, which at one time was the capital of a kingdom called the Ardzruni Kingdom. And the king at the time, Gagik I, 915 to 921, built this magnificent church, which is on the list of the 100 most important architectural monuments in the world.
So this church is on this list of 100 most important monuments in the world. Now, in that document, does it say anywhere who built it?
Well, the 100 churches or 100 monuments is by the United Nations, so they clearly know that it's done by Armenians. So it's important because the entire outside of the church is covered with reliefs, carvings, which are from the Old Testament of the Bible. So it's an important architectural and artistic church.
While you were there, did anybody ask you who you are and why you're visiting, or was there this idea that they knew you were Armenian?
Well, I don't think people just knew that we were Armenian, but you know, the places that we interacted, let's say at a hotel or maybe in a market, if you talk to people, you could tell them you were Armenian, and people were very happy to hear that. They were not upset about it. They didn't look at you any differently. And in fact, I had many conversations with local people. That area is mostly Kurdish, not Turkish, actually. So Kurds are part of Turkey. They're Turkish citizens, but they're ethnically different than the Turks.
So let's take a look at one of the other pictures that you've taken
Okay.
and describe what this picture is.
Well, earlier I had mentioned to you the city of Ani, and the city of Ani, which is located in today eastern Turkey, is located right on the border with the modern country of Armenia. And Ani was the capital of Armenia in the 11th century during the Bagratuni kingdom. It was a magnificent city. In fact, it was so magnificent they called it the city of 1,001 churches. So the photograph that we're looking at is of the major church called the Cathedral of Ani, which was built in 1001 AD. It was completed in 1001. Actually, the dome is collapsed, so you see the area should be a dome above the top of it. But this church is another one of the great masterpieces of Armenian architecture, probably one of the 2 or 3 top most beautiful and architecturally significant churches in all of Armenian history.
So you've taken a lot of pictures while there, and one of the next things I want you to talk about is the next picture that you've taken.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is a photograph taken in the city of Constantinople, which today is Istanbul, which at one time was the capital of the Ottoman Empire. And in Constantinople, there was a very large Armenian population. Several 100,000 Armenians actually lived in Constantinople. And the photograph we're looking at is actually the headquarters of the Patriarchate of the Armenian Church in Turkey. So for hundreds of years, this has been the religious capital of the Armenians living in the Ottoman Turkish Empire. And the Armenian Patriarch was the spiritual and also leader of the Armenian community, and this is his headquarters in Constantinople.
Why was religion so important to the Armenian people? I mean, even here in Fresno, you've got 5, in Fresno area, you've got 5 Armenian churches. There's one just down the street here in downtown Fresno. It sounds like Christianity was important to this people.
Well, it became part of the Armenian identity. So as sometimes we can look at other cultures and we probably have 1 or 2 ideas about that culture. Maybe you think Italians, they cook well, or they have some other characteristic. It may just be a perception, but for most of history, people looking at the Armenians have said, well, they have a Christian nature to them. And the Armenians themselves were strongly attached to their Christian religion. And so when you look at their churches and you look at their art and you look at their music, all aspects have been affected by and influenced by that Christian religion. And so that's what they brought back with them. And after the genocide, they kept that tie to the church as a tie also to their homeland.
Talk about the Armenians in Fresno. Are they supportive of the Armenian Studies program at Fresno State?
We're very fortunate that the Armenian community has supported the Armenian Studies program in many, many ways. It's not just a question of financial support. It's support by attending and participating in our lecture series. It's coming to our banquets. It's coming to see our students and interacting with our students to see what we are producing as a result of their efforts to have this Armenian Studies program.
One of the things I want you to tell us now is the next picture we're going to show on screen, because again, while you were there, you took hundreds of pictures. I mean, we can only show 5. So what is this next picture of?
Well, this is, for me, was one of the most important spiritual moments that I had. This is a sort of a rock fortress that you can see, surrounded now by water, which was called the Fortress of Romkla. And Romkla in the 12th century was actually the headquarters of the Universal Armenian Church. Today, the headquarters of the Universal Armenian Church is in Holy Echmiadzin, because that's where it began in the 4th century. We actually have 2 Catholicosates today.
And what is a Catholicos for our audience members who are not familiar with that?
The Catholicos is the equivalent of the Pope, so he is the spiritual leader of the Armenian Church. And Romkla, which is located in the area of Armenian Cilicia, actually just outside the borders of the actual Cilicia, but in that area, was the place where one of the great Armenian Catholicoi by the name of Saint Nerses Shnorhali, the Graceful, was Catholicos. He was a great writer, and also probably the greatest Armenian painter, Toros Roslin, painted in this church. So really a fantastic historical site.
You know, I want to ask a question that I get all the time, and I'm sure you get all the time too. Why the IAN or YAN when it comes to Armenian last names? I mean, you know, like you look at the community around us and Mugrdechian, Der Mugrdechian, Tateosian, Bedrosian, the IAN or YAN. Why does that occur?
Well, the IAN is really a way of trying to transliterate the Armenian word yan, that is the ending yan, which is put at the end of names to make it a last name. So a name like Bedros, Peter, Bedrosian, son of Peter. So you could have a name like that. Tomasian would be son of Thomas, or it could be some kind of profession that someone was in. So a name like Kuyumjan would be a goldsmith, or named Hatzakortian could be something like baker. So lots of different names, but all with the yan ending. Just about all have the yan ending, and it's a very characteristic Armenian ending.
When the Armenians came to Fresno, did they change their last name a lot of times?
A few families did, and that was because they wanted to fit into the society. There actually was discrimination at many times against Armenians. So some families did change their names to, in a sense, Americanize their names, their last names.
So let's talk about the last picture that you've taken. We're running out of time this week on the program, but take a look and tell us what this picture was of.
Well, in the background, I'm standing in front of, again, one of the most famous, iconic places in all of Armenia. It's the fortress of Sis, S-I-S, which was, for a while, during the period of the 12th and 13th century, was the capital of Armenian Cilicia, the actual place where the king of Armenia lived, on top of this outcropping fortress, and also was the headquarters of the Armenian Church. So the Catholicosate, which was previously at Romkla, had moved to Sis in the 12th and 13th century, actually in the 13th century, and then remained there all the way up until the 20th century.
Let's talk now again about the Armenian Studies program at Fresno State. Is this a respected program? I mean, if I go to, let's say, Los Angeles or the East Coast or even overseas, do people know about the Armenian Studies program in Fresno?
Well, they do. This is a program which has, over the years, gained a reputation based on a lot of factors. One has been the very active faculty that has been here, active in the sense of active in their profession. They've been active in the community by speaking. And then through our High Sharjum, people throughout the world know about our program. In addition to that, it's also learning about the students and producing students who are well educated, and people know that and appreciate that.
The newspaper, I get it at my house, my parents get it, and we don't pay for this. Can people sign up for it?
Well, actually now we encourage people to go online. We have all the back issues and the current issues of High Sharjum at our Fresno State website. So you can simply Google Armenian Studies Program at Fresno State. You'll come to our website, and then you can go under resources and find High Sharjum, and you can learn all about it.
You do a banquet that you mentioned a couple of times. What is the banquet about?
Well, some 25 years ago, the faculty, Professor Kuyumjan and myself, decided that we should have an event in which we could get the faculty, the administration, students, and also the community to interact. And it's a way to highlight all of those elements. So we hold annually a banquet. We sometimes invite special guests, but usually it's just highlighting our students, our faculty. This year we're going to have a banquet in March, and our guest is going to be our new Fresno State president, Dr. Joseph Castro, who will be introduced to the Armenian community through our banquet.
Can anybody take Armenian Studies courses?
They're wide open. Any person can take them. You can enroll through Open University if you're not a regular Fresno State student, and anybody can take the courses.
What else do you have going on in the program that you want to let our audience members know about? April 24th, where do you have your commemoration?
Well, on April 24th, the Armenian Students Organization and Armenian Studies Program co-sponsor an annual event held at the Free Speech area. We've done that for more than 30 years now, actually close to 40 years. Next year will be the 40th anniversary, and actually it's been even longer than that. We do so many different things. We've talked about our newspaper. We do trips to Armenia. So periodically, every 2 to 3 years, I've led a study trip to Armenia. Actually, you were on that many years ago.
For the record, yes, I've been there, and you know, it was interesting because with the students, you were able to take us from north to south all over the country.
Well, we not only got to see the country, because when you learn about something in class, sometimes it's just something you see in a picture or read about in a book. But when you go someplace and actually see it, I think the impression is much greater. And then you go to a place which is virtually all Armenian, and that also has an impression.
We're running out of time this week on the program, Professor, but if I'm a student that doesn't have an Armenian background, why should I take one of your classes?
Well, for the reasons that many students take it. I usually ask my students, why do you want to take the course? And many of the non-Armenian students say, it looked interesting. It was something which was different, but was something that they knew about in the sense they've heard of Armenians but wanted to learn about it. And I would have to say that most of the students that come out of those classes are very happy that they've taken it, and some even go on and minor in Armenian studies.
You also do lectures that periodically go on throughout the year in the evening time. So can they find that information on your website?
Right on our website. We have our calendar, and we have actually now videos, thanks to you, of some of the lectures.
Thanks to CMAC.
Thanks to CMAC. And we have a wonderful lecture series. We bring annually some 15 to 20 guest speakers, events, and it's a way for us to interact with the community.
Professor, thank you so much for coming on the program. I know you have a busy schedule and you're always running with activities.
Thank you, Sevag. It's been a pleasure to be with you this evening.
That's all for this edition of San Joaquin Spotlight. To the volunteer crew that made this and every production possible, thank you. We couldn't do this without you. To our audience members listening on 90.7 FM KFSR Fresno, thank you for your time. To our viewers on CMAC, Comcast, and AT&T, thank you for tuning in to us. This week we heard from Professor Barlow Der Mugrdechian. He's the director of the Armenian Studies program at Fresno State. That's all for this edition. Tune in next week for a new edition.